Welcome everyone. Just wanted to check if you can hear my voice. You can just confirm in the chat window if you're able to hear my voice. Please type there. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you who joined from many different parts of the globe probably. Welcome to you to this talk on deploying apps in Azure. And deploying apps in Azure is pretty wide in terms of options available today, which means that if you have a website running on premises or under development, you have multiple ways to deploy them, right? We will cover them slowly one by one, but in today's talk, we will focus mainly on app services where we can deploy a website into that. Now, before we go and try to build the app, we first need to create where we need to put the app. So let's see how it looks like in a portal perspective. So if you go into Azure Portal and then create an app services, how that experience looks like. But before that, I just want to quickly show you the agenda. It's a very brief agenda, but we will be talking a lot in the portal, showing you many different options available. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna share all the things which we will be doing. And then this is the list of resources or links available. And these are all available in the same YouTube live link under the description. So you don't have to really take a screenshot or copy it. You can always go ahead and copy from the description within this video, right? So that's already there for you. Now let's go into the portal and let's see how that experience looks like. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go into the Azure portal, which is already open in my window. So this is portal.azure.com. So once you go there and launch this application, it basically opens a credential. You enter that password and username, and you will log into the Azure portal. It may look different for you depending on what all services you might have created. So it doesn't matter much how it looks at my end because it's absolutely very, very user-centric. Now, what is main thing is that whenever you create any resource within Azure, remember one thing that you need to put it inside a resource group. So that resource group here is what we need to first create if it is not available. So assuming that it's not available, so I'm going to go ahead and create. There are multiple ways by which you can create Azure resource group. So let's see how that resource group creation looks like in a different perspective. We can do it from here pretty easy. Click on plus add and then go ahead and create a resource group. But that's probably not the way you will be doing in the DevOps kind of scenario, because in DevOps, you will never come to this portal and then do things. So rather, we'll be writing either a Terraform script or Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell or ARM template or many other different supporting third-party scripts and infrastructure as a code kind of mechanism. So Terraform is the way to go now. So you can literally write all the Azure resources, create them in Terraform, and then use it in your DevOps pipeline. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell is basically a browser-based command prompt for you, and you can just try it out. I already have it installed in my local machine, but I want to show you the experience where you don't need to install anything. So if you go to shell.azure.com, it opens up something like this. You look into this browser. This is not exactly the browser like interface. It looks like something like a command prompt, right? So that's the beauty here. Let's go ahead and then see what we can do for here. So if I say AZ, that's the Azure CLI, which is already installed in this Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell, you can think of it as an environment ready for you with all the necessary tools available. So if you just in case you are working with Kubernetes, you just type kubectl, and kubectl is a tool which is already there. If you want to work with Git, so Git is already installed. Like that, we have AZ, which is also installed. So AZ is the command through which we interact with Azure. So we can view them. Yeah. So let me try to, there's a question to zoom in. So I'm just trying to see if I can increase the font size. Yeah, we can increase the font size. So I hope that works. So let me set it up. Now this is the command prompt from where I'm going to create a resource group. This is just a different experience I wanted to show you, right? Nothing fancy about it. So I'll say AZ group create. Now it's quite fluent in the sense like how you interact with Azure. And then if you say AZ group create, it needs two parameters. One is name. You can use short form -n, and then you give a name group called 22 May. So that's the date today. And then I need to also tell which location this group will be created, right? So let's put something like East US. So you can figure out the location names by writing another Azure CLI, which will give you the list of locations and then show you that. So you can see that the list of locations is visible in the error message, right? You can also write a list command and then get those lists as well. So you can use any one of them. Now this is created, which means now if I go back to my Azure portal, right, and I show you the refresh list of the resource groups, you should ideally be able to see that 22nd May available over here. You can see that this is now available. Now, it's just now created, right? So it just now got created, nothing available, so it's all empty. Now that's where I'm going to create the resource, that means the app service, where I will be deploying my web application. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to click on plus icon now. This is a different experience. And it shows me a bunch of resources which I can choose from. I'm not going to select like, I may be forgetting like which group it is, but it is very easy for you to identify if you want to start working on it. Because you're working on web, you go to web and then you get to see the web related services, and you can pick and choose from this list, like, and you can start creating the service you want to create. You can go to compute, and then it shows you all the compute related resources like that. However, you can search from the top bar also. So you can say app service. Now, if you see that, there is a service called app services, and it directly takes you to the app services. And it shows you all the previously created app services in the list. And I'm going to go ahead and say add. The moment I say add, it comes with a wizard-like interface. And that's where you can either create a new resource group and pick an existing resource group. So I can pick my existing resource group and then give a name which should be uniquely identifiable. Now, so there's a complaint about the screen size is too small. So let me try to change the way it looks. Maybe I can just maximize the screen, and hopefully this should be fine. Okay, so that's now full screen. So that's will give you much more screen space. Now, if you can see that, now this gives me quite a few options, and I will walk you through all of them. This basically needs you to provide a name. And you can see at the below of this text box, something like Azure Websites.net. So definitely this will be a publicly identifiable URL. And that means that the URL really is something which is uniquely identifiable. So you need to provide some name. So let's use something like my name and then 1, 2, 3. Hopefully nobody has created anything like that. So you get the green check icon, which clearly tells that, hey, you are kind of okay at this point in time. And then you get to see the list, right? And then there are two options by which you can publish the um, website. One is by using a Docker container. Nowadays, people create application and then containerize that, right? We'll cover it in our upcoming session, but not in this one. But however, this option is already available. So if you have an application written for container, you can use that container-based application for this website. But then you have to choose it while creating the app service. So you are not doing it. So we'll say, we'll write a code, just like a code, and then no container, no complexities, and then just move it, right? So we'll see that option. And then here you choose the runtime. This is important because this is what you decide. Like you tell that, hey, this is my application is a Java application or a .NET Core application or ASP.NET application, Node application. All these things which are supported here, you can pick from this list. So you pick up from, let's say, .NET 5. That's the latest .NET Core and the future of the .NET, right? .NET 5, that's most current. And then you can choose what is the operating system you want to run this code against. So do you want to run it in Linux or Windows? So because .NET 5 runs on both Linux and Windows, you can choose either of them. But if you, let's say, choose something like a fully .NET framework, right, not the core, then you must select Windows because it doesn't run on Linux, right? But for other things like Python, Java, Node, etc., can run on both Linux and Windows. And then you select a region where you want to deploy. So this is up to you. So you can either select the same region which your resource group is, or you can select any other region. Now, the next thing, which is most important, is the Windows plan. That means what is the size of a machine, where it resides, what is the operating system you are using. Now you can see that you can create a new name, or you can just leave with the default one. And if you see the SKU size, etc., it shows you that it's a standard infrastructure with 1 GB memory. Now, if I go move into the next, this is an interesting stuff. And this is what I'm planning to cover in a separate discussion, where it can pick up your source code from a GitHub repository, right? You just connect it. It's not connected at this point in time. It's in preview, by the way. And then it builds the GitHub actions for you. So you don't need to write that YAML file, which is basically the CI/CD pipeline in GitHub today. So it builds that CI/CD pipeline for you. You don't have to do it, right? And then you are ready to go. So the moment you, let's say, check in a code and make some changes, and the GitHub action kickstarts, and then it deploys your code to the app services. So that's the continuous deployment experience for you, right? So we don't want to do that now, but we'll do it later point in time in separate discussion where we will talk about GitHub for application development. Now, do you want to really enable the application inside? So application inside, as you know, that if you might have used App Dynamics or something like that, it captures the information about your application, the error messages, the exceptions, the things like that you want to capture while running the application. Not always errors, but sometimes, let's say, in a typical long-running method, you want to capture some time when it got started and when it ended, and it probably working fine, but you want to still observe like how long it's taking, or is it taking too long, or got somewhere stuck, something like that. So all the logs can be captured through application inside, and then beyond, and then plus the server logs, like all your IIS, if you're just running on IIS or whatever web service you're running, all those things will be captured. So I'm not going to create it because it will take some time to create. So I'll just leave it like that, but you should ideally be leveraging that capability. Tag is another important aspect, especially for the enterprise kind of scenario where you need to cross-charge between the businesses. You provide all those details like project ID, etc., in the tag cost center number, so that people can cross-charge for the resources you have created, right? And then this is a summary of what I have done, right? So you can see that clearly it is a .NET 5 application. Resource group is here. That's the name of my application. It will be running on Windows, and it's going to go to US. And then it's a free shared infrastructure, 1 GB of memory given to me. App inside is not enabled. Continuous deployment, CD is not enabled. So I go ahead and hit create. And that should create the infrastructure, make it ready for me. Now, while it is getting created, right, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my development machine and then start building an app. Now, what I can do, I can build an app. I can get an app from anywhere, but I want to show you that building experience is not, you don't need to write any code, right? So I basically want to show you the tool experience. So what I have is that I have a folder. Imagine this is a blank folder, and that's where I'm going to create my application. And my application is .NET 5, Core 5 application. So to do that, I need to go into the command prompt. I say CMD, and I go into the command prompt. You see here, let me increase the font size. You see here that right now I'm in this, and if I say .NET, it shows me the .NET SDK, etc., whether it's installed or not. Now, to check whether I have got the required SDK, etc., installed, I can say .NET -- list, and you can see the help from the help SDKs. I'll show you the list of SDKs available in my machine, starting from 3 to 5.0.203. So I have got the 5 installed. So if I now want to create an app that's on website, all right, let's build something like MVC app. If I need to build an app like this, so what I can do, I can say .NET new, and then I say MVC and just hit enter. What happens? It's going to go ahead and create an MVC app for me, right? And it will basically create all the necessary files, csproj, try to restore it. Everything works fine, right? So just to show you what all files it got created, if I go back to the folder, you see a lot of files now present in the folder. These are the files which I need to work on, right? Now, in this folder, I'm going to use the development tool or IDE, Integrated Development Environment, called VS Code. Visual Studio Code is a freely available tool. Anybody can download. It's a fairly small in size, 60 MB, and then you can attach the extension to make it work for you depending on what kind of work you're doing. So it is quite extensible. So I'll say code. I'll go to into the same command prompt, and I say code dot. If I do that, then my code opens in the same folder. And when it opens in the same folder, it basically opens the same set of files which just now got created. Now you can see that all of them are now available. Now if I go into views, index, you will find the HTML, etc. Right? That looks fine. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to build this application. So I can build it from my VS Code. I can build it from the .NET CLI. So I'll show you the simplest option, that is .NET CLI, and I say build. If I do that, the application will be built. So all the code part will be compiled in DLLs, the HTMLs and JavaScripts. Everything will be ready for me for deployment, right? So you can see that the build is successful. That means I can run this application in Azure. Now let's go to the Azure and see whether we have this action which we did take is complete. Now you can see that it is complete. You go to the resources, and you see that this is kind of done, right? Now, there are multiple ways by which you can post your code over here. So one of the ways is that you get a publish profile. Publish profile is nothing but your FTP information in an XML file. So if you download this publish profile, right, what happens, it shows you all the details in an XML file. So let me open that in a notepad. Okay. And I know that's not that great to view, but I wanted to highlight that you have got something like the publish URL, the username, the password, and you also have FTP information just in case you are using FTP. So all this necessary details of your website are available in this publish profile. It can be compromised by the way you share it with the developer community, and then they use it for something else, and then you find that you are in risk. So you can always reset it. Now, that is fairly simple task. You come over here and say reset publish profile, and then you will get new setup username and passwords, and that will become your current published profile, right? So that's how you basically go ahead and choose from. So what do you want to do? Now let's see how we can control everything without this published profile kind of thing, where I don't want to do that, but use something more secure from the Visual Studio Code. Now you can see that one of the things in the Visual Studio Code is an extension, set of extensions I talked about earlier. Now I want to show you that I have got a bunch of extensions installed in my machine, right? There are a lot of extensions I have, and I have got 54 extensions, right? And if you ask me what is what, I may not be able to tell you, because as and when required, I just kept them installing, right? It's absolutely okay. And then there's an important extension which I use is called Azure Tools. Okay, this is a set of extensions. Basically, it's not one extension, it's a set of extensions. So if you search for Azure Tools, you see that you can work with a lot of Azure services from your Visual Studio Code with multiple extensions. So instead of you going and installing all of them one by one, you can go and say that I need this package, that's tools, Azure Tools, and then give me all of them. So you get all of them, right? You can see that it's a quite a big list. And then you can see that you have got Bicep, Azure Arm, etc., all of them present here. So I am going to use this app service. Now, Visual Studio Code can log into Azure, right? And once it logs into Azure, it basically will be able to interact with Azure, which means that it can now read the Azure account and then do on behalf of you, right? So that login is the first step. Now, how do you invoke that login in Visual Studio? You use Control-Shift-P, and that opens the command palette. And then one of the things you use is that Azure login or sign in. That's what you will be using. Now, if you say that, it takes you to the browser. And then you enter the username and password. You get inside the Azure Portal for Visual Studio. So that's the authentication which happens. Okay, and you close this. Done. You come back to the Visual Studio. You see that you have got this subscription details showing up on top, which means then you basically gonna go ahead and then select one of the subscription which you want to work against. So I have only one app subscription which I have access to against this username and password. So I am going to go and use this. That's okay. I will say okay, and I'm right now ready. The next thing is that this code which I have written has to go to Azure App Service. Now, App Service is already created. I created that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to invoke again the command palette. And then you say that Azure App Service deploy to web app. So if you type Azure App Service, it'll show you all the Azure App Service related commands. So App Service. And you see that there are a bunch of things you can do. You can delete Azure App Service. You can create a new web app. You can even deploy or disconnect that repo, right? So you can do all sort of things. So I'll choose the deploy to web app. And then you can see that select a folder to deploy, right? Your code folder. That's a local folder. And it asks you to add a config file. So it got added, and then it picks up all the apps which is there in my Azure subscription. And the app service which I created is this one, the last one, just to confirm whether we are in the right. Let me just quickly check. This is the app. Okay, so we're gonna use this one. So we'll choose this one and then say that, are you sure you want to deploy to this? Because it's going to override if there is anything already there, right? So this is a bit risky in the sense like when you deploy something, right? You just need to make sure that you deploy the right thing to the right place, right? So you just say do not show again, and then it shows you the progress at the below, right? It starts building again, and then making publishable packages, and then it zips it up, and then uses the FTP information and pushes it to there, and then unzip there, and then configure the files, etc., for the application needed, right? So it's a .NET Core application, so it will take necessary actions for .NET Core and configure your IIS. Because I have chosen Windows, all of them will be done for you automatically through this, right? So it says that the deployment is completed. It's fairly straightforward and easy, right? And you can say that I want to browse to the website, and I say open. It's going to open the website in a browser. Let me show it here. And you can see that the website is now up and running. So let me not open it in a full screen mode because we don't have enough content available. Now I'm going to go ahead and change something in this website and redeploy. Let's see how that experience looks like. So we're going to the index.html. It has got something called welcome. Welcome Azure 22nd May 2021. I do that. That saves automatically. So I have the autosave enabled, and I perform the same activity. Deploy to web app, and choose the recently used web application, and I say deploy. And I'll kickstart the same process again, build it, package it, publish it, configure it, replace whatever is there previously. Now, once this gives me an indication that this is successfully done, what I can do, I can refresh my portal and see the change in the actual public website. In fact, this is a public website now, which is accessible by all of you. So you will be able to see the same thing which I'm using. So let me browse to the website, and I say open. And you can see that now it has got a different view. Right? It's a public URL. You can see that, and it's a different view. So welcome Azure 22nd May 2021. So things are working fine. So I can make changes, push it again, and changes are getting reflected. That's the experience of using the local development environment to push the code in a naive way. Let's put it that way, because we're not going to do that in a real production kind of environment. We're going to use something like a GitHub action or a DevOps pipeline to automate this whole process. So we'll not manually trigger that, right? So we might have some checks and balances to make before we can really push them into the actual production scenario. So we'll talk about in detail about the slots, about the DevOps integration, about the pipeline building process, etc. later point in time. But here, let's see a couple of other options which we can play around with in the Azure portal. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just close this thing, and then I'm going to zoom it. Okay, so I'm just going to I'll show you a couple of things. One of the things I want to show you is here. The log stream. That's an interesting area. So log stream does give you the live log experience. Now you can see that it is asking me to enable the app services logs. So let us first enable it. Application log in the file system. And I say verbose, and then I say save. Detail error messages, fail request tracking. Okay, so I just save it. Now, once it is confirmed, right, successfully updated, I go into the log, live log stream, which means the actual log which is happening in the server level. I want to show you the experience over here, how that looks like. You have this application, right? You go into this second page called privacy. It opens up the page. It works fine. And then I change that URL to privacy2, which doesn't exist. And it gives me an error. And as soon as I have an error, you can see that live log gives me the error. 404 not found. That's exactly the error I received, right? So you might have much more detail about the error, which you can capture it from here. So if you are, let's say, doing it initially, you can do these things to really check if things are fine, what is the problem, etc. So you can enable that. It really helps. You can also check the health of your application, right? It's not yet enabled, right? You can see the logs. We do not have any logs enabled. Matrix alert, all these things can be configured as per your need. Now you need to also remember some of the things, right? That I have chosen the free version of App Service. Now, some of the features are not available in free version, for which you need to upgrade it to the production kind of version, where you need to pay a little more extra to get those services. So if you are deploying a real production environment, you should not be using free version. Free version is for development purposes, to check your code, etc. But if you need to really do that, you should be doing it in the production environment. Now, it also gives me a troubleshooting tool experience, right? So let me log in another window. And that takes me to a little bit of inside of the website, where I can see but bit more details, right? So let me increase the font size so you'll be able to see it. You can see that I can go into the app settings, and it shows me the app settings. I go back. I go to the debug console and open, let's say, command prompt. And it shows me the files, how it is available. Go into the sites, go to www roots, and you can see all my DLLs. That's the application name, May 21, 2021, May 22, 2021, and then all these files which are getting run are available over here, JS files, CSS, etc. So you can even download and then see what that file looks like. Go to home, you can even run something on your own. If you want to restart something, you can just run it. It's like accessing the real production environment from your browser, right? So it's like going into the actual environment. Let me go to this one. Second. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and show you one more quick thing. It tells me about the system information, right? So what is I'm using now? And you can see that the operating system version is Windows. Definitely it's Windows because I chose Windows. Processor count, machine name, etc., which you might not need or might need. You never know. And then if you have any connection string, right, it shows you the connection string coming from that, right? I'm not using any connection string, but it came as a default connection string when I created the ASP.NET Core application. And all these environment variables, which I might or might not use from my application. So there are scenarios where you might be having your secrets in an environment variable, and you want to capture that in an application, not store them in the web config file. You can read it from there. There are path information available, and then HTTP headers, server variables, whatnot. So you get a lot of information. And if you have any extension installed, right, it'll show you the extension. There is no extension available. If you want to enable, let's say, New Relic, it's an extension. You just say install, the New Relic will be installed. So you can do much more beyond your actual application through this uh, tool called Kudu. So we call it Kudu. Kudu is a name given for this tool, and you can see that there are a bunch of extensions available for many different kind of things you might be doing over here. So it really is helpful in the initial development phase when you are going through it and then trying to figure out what is wrong in your application. Now let's go back to the Azure portal and then show you the couple of other things. Now, my application is a public application. It doesn't really hold any restriction, but you want to enable, let's say, a login, right? I haven't written any code to enable the login, right? Authentication. So what I can do, I can bring in an external identity provider into my application and configure it for my application. So you can see that it allows me to add a couple of things like Microsoft login. So it will prompt you the Microsoft username and password, which is your Hotmail, Live, MSN, Outlook.com kind of accounts. Or even you can have other provider account and then register it as a Microsoft account, right? So you basically give that email address as a username, and password is something which you choose. Not the exact same password. That's what people do mostly the mistakes. You should be choosing a different password. It's just a username, right? It's not the same user ID we are using. Facebook is just use the same Facebook account and then get logged in. You can use Google and then Google support, and then you have Twitter also. So you can even have your Twitter account as the credential provider. So you can choose that, and then it basically creates an entry in there, a dev portal, give you the application secret, and that secret will be used in a configuration file to invoke the first screen whenever you are not authenticated, and then it'll continue with a bearer token. And this basically uses the OAuth kind of workflow. So it uses the OAuth workflow to interact with the system, right? So you can see that it basically is something which is very convenient if you happen to have it in your application. Now, there are a couple of things. Now, I said that this is a free version of the portal. You might not be able to configure a lot of things like custom domain, but there is an option for you to add your custom domain. So if you're building a company homepage, you definitely would not be using something.azure.websites.net. Rather, it will be your company name.com or .org, whatever it is. You then specify that. If you have a TLS or SSL kind of setting, right, certificate-based authentication, if you're so use that your own certificate, right? By default, Azure provides a certificate, right? All the websites are HTTPS websites, so it provides your TSL certificate. But if you have to bring in your brand name along with the website, right, then you use your own custom certificate, right, provided by the certificate provider. You can increase the capacity of the app service. So it basically allow you to say, I want to scale up, which means that whatever size of the machine you have asked for initially, you can say that I need more. So I need, let's say, instead of 2 GB of RAM, I need 6 GB or 8 GB of RAM. So that's scaling up, having the same machine, but having more power in that machine. And another is scale out, which means that you create the replica of the machines you have, and then having it set behind load balancer kind of setup, where people can land in the load balancer and then be available for you to reach out to any of the servers, right? So you don't need another deployment. It will automatically pick up your code from the storage, wherever it stores from the management purpose, and then configure it as if you are doing the deployment for the first time. So the moment you say, I want to scale out, instead of 2 machines, I need 20 machines, all the new 18 machines will be configured for you. You don't need to run through the whole things. You have something called web jobs. That's sort of like a Windows service kind of thing, right? You can think of that perspective, the backend job. So if you have something which doesn't require you to, let's say, have an interface and run it on a schedule basis or on a trigger basis. So you call it and then it triggers, or it runs on a daily basis, something like a scheduled job. You can use the web job. So you need to write web job using the web job kind of format. So it's not that simple website can go in as web job, but you have to write it in a web job. So there is a different way to write web job, which you can put it over there. And then you have got many other different things which you can do over here to, instead of like running the whole thing on your own and then moving it. So that's what I wanted to briefly talk about. And then I wanted to show you that because I'm using my own personal account to create this, it might be incurring a lot of cost at the end of the day. So I want to delete it. So if I want to delete it, so what essentially I'll be doing, because I'm doing it in a kind of like a test purpose, so I can delete the whole resource group. It's too risky for anything which is production, but when you are in development, you just have multiple resources created within a resource group, and you just delete the resource group. All of them will be deleted for you, right? So you can basically clean up everything which you have done, and it will not cost you anymore, right? So I've got few other resource groups available, right? So if I go into, let's say, the home resource groups, for example, I have got this RG app resource group. What I can say that I can delete resource group, and it asks me a confirmation. The confirmation is type the resource group name, so that if you just say by mistake clicked on this option, you still are being warned. And then if you are explicit about it, by providing the resource group, you are ensuring that yes, you want to delete the resource groups, right? So you're basically going to go ahead and delete everything you want to delete, right? So now it is gone. I won't be able to deploy anymore into this. So if I even try with my Visual Studio Code, now notice that it's still running, right? So it might be cleared, but it's now clearing the resource group, right? Now, if I try to run this, it'll definitely throw me an error because this never exists, right? So that's the kind of experience you will find when you work on app services for a simple website, right? Not a containerized website, and then try to push it from your development environment. And this is what I wanted to show you. If you have any question, please feel free to type it out here in the chat window, and I'll be able to see it in my So if there is no further question, maybe we can probably end this call. It was planned for a 45 minutes thing because I didn't want to do a 1 hour long session about it. But if you have, let's say, any question, feel free to post the question. Again, just showing you the resource slide, just in case if you need to see what I have delivered earlier, it's all available. This all will also be available in that portal. After this talk, I'm going to post it in the URL, and you'll be able to see that in the portal itself. So you will get to see the latest and what is coming. All right. So any plan for CI/CD session? Definitely yes. There's a plan to do a CI/CD session, and I'm going to cover not just the GitHub action, but also the Azure DevOps, which is basically most used today, right, in an enterprise kind of scenario. So I will cover a range of tools which you can use for building application on Azure or anything else, right? And how do you build the pipeline? That's definitely a topic. Now, because this is a YouTube live, this will be available in my YouTube channel. So if you go to the subscribe to that channel, you'll be able to watch it later. Even if you use the first link, which is past events, you can also have the YouTube link available. And all of these links are available in the description of my video in the YouTube. So you can just copy it from there. You don't tend to take a screenshot and then type it out. Right. So I think we are on top of the hours. So I will go ahead and then wrap it up. And again, thank you very much for joining this call. I know it is weekend. I really appreciate you spending time on learning something, which shows really that how passionate you are about the technology. That really is really encouraging for me. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you in my upcoming event, which I plan to do every week. And then I'll figure a best date on those. So please feel free to give me a comment on like which day time works for you best. I'll try to fit my session in that. I'm right now trying out multiple different slots to find which works the best. And I've seen that Friday lunchtime is the time where most of the people joins. So probably my next one will be on upcoming Friday during the lunchtime, Indian lunchtime, 1 to 2, and then we will talk about another topic on Azure. Till then, thank you very much and have a great weekend.